Okay, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to a finally horizontal version of the most boring and technically inept game review channel on the internet. Yes, we're back here at Bland Gaming. I have actually remembered to turn my phone the right way since I am not a professional YouTuber. I don't even have a studio. I'm doing this in my dining room here and with leftover St. Patrick's Day decorations, decorum, and what have you. But anyway, I have promised a lot of you a review of Symbaroum, and friends and neighbors and watchers, all 250 of you. Hey, today's our day. Let's talk about Symbaroum. It's amazing. But we are doing Bland Gaming, which means we do have the drink of the day. My littlest child has already gone to bed. My wife is watching her shows upstairs, and then my other two sons are glued to their computers. So let's have a little bit of Irish death, because we're reviewing Symbaroum, and I figured, okay, a drink called Death, definitely appropriate for Symbaroum. And then Irish, although this is basically a Scandinavian type of setting and culture, Irish are definitely part of the savage people. I know got a good chunk of me has very angry Irish blood flowing through my veins. Anyway, so let's get back to Symbaroum. What is Symbaroum? And, why would you want to play Symbaroum versus just a Celtic style of D&D? Well, for one thing, before you sit down and start playing Symbaroum, the first thing that you have to do is you have to get on Amazon Music or get on YouTube, whatever you have to do in order to get to the official soundtrack of Symbaroum, which is anything that is done by Dahnheim. Of course, I am not playing any copyrighted music in the background, although if I were, and if somehow you were able to detect it, it's probably may or may not be Dahnheim. Paleo Wolf is another really great one that has almost more of a Stone Age type of feel, but you could play any song from Dahnheim while you're playing Symbaroum, and it would be appropriate. So anyway, what sets this apart? What is different about this than, say, D&D? Well, the big thing about Symbaroum that I really like is that while your Dungeons and Dragons settings will have a huge world type of building, Symbaroum approaches the exact opposite idea. They take this little teeny tiny area in what's probably a greater world, and they just detail the crap out of it, and it is so rich in detail as far as the setting goes, and in the little details, and the overall feel of this I say world, but just this setting is it's absolutely amazing. The first thing that grabbed me about Symbaroum is the amazing art by, you guys know I love art in games, and Martin Grip does the art to Symbaroum. We've seen his stuff in Alien, in the Alien role-playing game, and just as much as the writers, Martin Grip is completely responsible for bringing this world alive. So let's talk about what exactly Symbaroum is. Now, I do have the map of Symbaroum over here that comes, that you have to order this from the Free League website. I love maps. I will be frank with you. I try not to speak ill of things, but I have to be a pretty fair reviewer. That as far as maps go, this one was a little bit disappointing. The size is not too big. Let's use a beer can for scale here. So, size is not great as some of their other maps. The material, it's a little bit light here, and then I didn't like having the barcode up in the corner there. That's definitely, and it's already starting to wear right here. And I have not, another disclaimer I have to give you, I am up to my ears in Coriolis, and we're really anxiously waiting the Twilight 2000 that I have not had a chance to run Symbaroum yet. There's an old saying that goes that once you get old, you can finally afford all the role-playing games that that you can that you'd want to play. You just don't have the time to play them anymore. And I don't. I get one game night a week, and I have to choose: is it going to be a miniatures game night? Is it going to be a role playing night? Or is it going to be a board game night? And, so it's hard for me to play more than one of these settings, especially because when I start a campaign, it has a tendency to last a while. So Thistlehold is one of the main cities in the setting of Symbaroum, and that's on the back of the map here. This was a nice map and everything, but again, the overall quality, the artwork is great. And it does its job. It illustrates the setting pretty well, but the production value is a little bit lower as far as just the quality of the map itself. But I like the drawing, and I like the map itself. It serves its purpose. The main advantage of having the map is the location of all the cities in the southern region here, of being able to let your characters know where everything is. So anyway, let's talk about this. After I have a sip of beer, I hope you're sipping your beer too. So when you buy the core rule book, you get everything that you need in order to play Symbaroum. So here's the setting. So a group of people that are humans. So that's the other thing I really liked about Symbaroum, is that it is a less is more, in the sense that this is primarily there's a human setting to this. It's definitely told from a human point of view. They do have demi-humans that are playable, that you can be, but they from reading it, me myself, I think that, like with my group, if we run a 5-player group, I will probably as a GM say, all right, well, 3 of you need to be human and everything. This is not the standard D&D setting where where it starts out like a joke, where an orc, an elf, and a gnome walk into a tavern. The gnome goes up to the bar and orders a drink. It's not like that at all. This is the world of Symbaroum and of Ambria is primarily a human area, but there are demi-humans in there. So let's talk about the world and what makes it different. So anyway, what happened was many, many years ago, there's a kingdom that's right down here at my beer can, okay? And this is a human kingdom, and I think it's called Alberos or Alberator. Alberator is, I believe, the name of the previous kingdom. So what happens is these Dark Lords rise up and they create this army of the dead, and they wage war on Alberator for years, and they're replenishing their armies with the human dead, and they're on the verge of just completely being wiped out. And these people are a very Nordic Viking type of people, a cross between upon reading it, it very much reminds me of historical Vikings, and then also of the Rohirrim, of Rohan. So anyway, the king himself winds up getting killed in fighting this war. And it's his 13-year-old daughter, who's named Corinthia. She picks up his sword, picks up his lance, she picks up his horse, and she leads her people to fight this war. And in the midst of it, she herself winds up getting captured. And I think we actually have a picture of her in the parade. And again, look at this artwork here. Just amazing, and I'm sorry about the glare. Okay, here we go. So here's the queen herself. Now, this is after the war here. This is Queen Corinthia. Let me see if I can get away from the glare. And that's like her holy entourage walking through Indaros, which is the capital city of Ambria. Well, but anyway, we'll get to that. So anyway, this lady here, this young lady here, well, she's not young anymore, but she winds up at 13 years old. She jumps on the back of her father's horse, grabs her father's lance, and decides that she's going to go and lead her people. And she winds up getting captured. And instead of having the effect of creating a sense of despair, what winds up happening instead is it makes the people fight harder, and she winds up getting rescued, but not before she's horribly disfigured, which is why she wears this kind of porcelain mask everywhere she goes, and it's fabled that she's scarred and damaged underneath there. However, she is a very capable warrior, and even though she does not even though she has a guard that follows her everywhere, she's definitely not a helpless queen. So her people love her. So the problem is now the land is covered in blight, and she has to move her people northward. So they cross these great mountains called the Titans, and they find this area that's right here, which are these plains which are inhabited by these barbarians. And the barbarians are human, but they may as well even be a different species from what the regular human, the civilized humans, are come to call the Ambrians. And this is called Ambria. Nation is called Ambria. And then just to the north of Ambria is this great haunted forest called Davokar. And Davokar contains the ruins of a once very powerful human nation called Symbaroum. And there are ruins and fabled riches all in this forest here. But here's the other problem. The problem is the forest is also inhabited on the outskirts. You have the barbarian tribes, which some of them submit, but there's kind of like an uneasy truce. The one thing I really like about this setting is in addition to just the human nation here, there are houses and factions within the nations here, and then there's barbarian tribes which all vie for power, and it has a very great potential for a Game of Thrones style intrigue within the greater nation states moving. But anyway, I digress. So what happens is that this forest, in addition to the ruins and promise of riches, it is packed with elves, and it is packed with horrible evils, ancient evils. So here's the problem. So Corinthia, she's basically like, I've learned when evil is left alone and to fester, I've learned the price of inaction. So what she starts doing is she starts moving her armies or expeditions up north into Davokar to kind of create like a buffer zone for herself, for her kingdom, to protect her kingdom. Well, years ago, after Symbar fell, the elves had this thing that they called the Iron Pact. And what the Iron Pact said is that no barbarians and no Ambrians will ever set foot in the forest. And if they do set foot in there, then they're trespassing, and their lives are defunct. And herein lies one of the coolest things about Symbaroum, is that it's kind of an upside down world in the sense that the elves in this are, and okay, so here's my deal with elves, all right? It's not that I don't like elves. It's just that everybody loves elves. Everybody gushes over Legolas. Everybody, when you sit down to play D&D, when you first played it, when I first played it in the 80s and everything, and even me myself, everybody was like, I want to be an elf. I want to be great with swords. I want to be great with magic. I want to be great with bows, right? But the deal is in Symbaroum, although not terribly evil, the elves are definitely the primary antagonists of the setting. Now, there are, you definitely can play elves later on in the game, but you would not see, other than the elvish ambassador himself, you would not see elves just walking around the human countries, because they're so hated that that they could get jumped and they could get killed. And the way that Martin Grip portrays these elves is just so mysterious and darker than what we're used to, as opposed to, say, token type elves and everything. So the other thing that's very interesting too is goblins, for instance. So goblins in this game, goblins and ogres, have been for years, they have been mistreated by the elves. And along come the humans, who, instead of enslaving them and what have you, they wind up paying them in gold, and they wind up by human standards, maybe they're not as nice to them, but what they wind up doing is they wind up, hiring these demi-humans to create their kingdoms, to rebuild their kingdoms. And this kinship, this is a great picture of an ogre right here. And this is a guy that's a hapless explorer, a couple of them in there. And what winds up happening is that this kinship is formed between ogres and between the goblins. And it's just, I love these archetypes here. Someone corrected me on that. I used to say archetypes. I've got a college degree too, and it's an academic degree. Anyway, but I digress. So I'm trying to find the pictures of the goblins, which are really just cool. Here we go. Good one of an ogre. There's kind of this far off. That's a picture of a goblin here. But here we go. This is a great one of a goblin. And Martin Grip, if just watch my video because you're my hero. You're so awesome. I would love for you to draw all the characters in my game. Well, we'll get to that, but we're running out of time here because remember, my marketing wife, 20 minutes. Okay, so anyway, so the goblins and the ogres wind up becoming the Ambrians' closest allies. And then the elves are primarily the antagonists. Now, in this game here, the thing that's kind of cool about when you make characters is there is no set, these archetypes that, you hear me? Archetypes? These archetypes that are provided are a guide to the types of players that there's something that you could make, if you wanted to follow this and make a duelist, if you wanted to follow this and make a captain. But they are definitely, you're not required to play an archetype. You can make your character up completely from scratch and basically choose your stats and choose what skill levels you want. And there's certain limitations and whatnot with that, but you can make whatever kind of character you want. And, if you choose to have mystical abilities, then there's weapons restrictions, and you definitely have mobility restrictions for if you're wearing certain types of armor. The other thing that I find really interesting, and the other thing that's interesting about this setting is that there is, as you increase in experience, you increase in your traits and in your skills. You don't increase in hit points. So one of the things, I have outgrown Dungeons and Dragons. I really appreciate Dungeons and Dragons for being one of the very first role-playing games. But the one thing that I didn't like about it was that, every time you go up a level, you get more hit points. And then pretty soon a 6-foot-tall human being has more hit points than a dragon that's the size of a friggin' gymnasium, right? That never made sense to me. And I understand there's certain mechanics, and a lot of diehard D&D fans are going to go, well, it's this, that, and the other. And hey, you know what? God bless you, more power to you, but it's really not my thing. So I like in this system that you don't increase in your hit points, so that you become more skilled, but you don't increase in your hit points. The other thing that's very interesting about this system is that all of the dice are rolled by the players. And what I mean by that is that, so like in Dungeons and Dragons, for instance, you would roll for damage whenever you damage a creature, right? And that's the same as here, but let's say the creature is trying to attack a player. Then instead of the creature rolling to hit, what the player does is the player has their defense value. They roll that, and that's modified by statistics that the creature has. If the creature hits the players, then instead of the players having an armor class or subtracting a set number amount, depending on what kind of armor, if they're wearing light armor, they roll 1d4, and that blocks 1d4 of the damage. If it's medium armor, it's 1d6. If 1d8, whatever, as you go up the tree there. So the point being is, in the entire game, the GM does not have to roll a single die, and I found that interesting. Is it better as far as the way that it is, as far as its practicality? I don't know. I mean, we'll see. We'll see what. I think it's pretty interesting the way that works. Mystical powers is their version of magic in this. You certainly can have magic-wielding characters. From what I've read here, the magic seems to be very simplified, very robust, and then it also comes with a cost. This is not the Harry Potter magic, where there's good magic or there's bad magic. This is more of and this is why I like it, this is more of the Robert E. Howard, Conan the Barbarian type of magic, where the more magic that you use, the more spells that you learn, then the more susceptible to the chaos of the universe you become, and you can devolve into this creature called an abomination if you wind up gaining too much power, using too many spells, and kind of playing the dark side a little too much. Anyway, so it's pretty awesome. So the one thing that I will caution you that I see that has been an issue before in some of my games. A lot of these skills and a lot of these traits will stack. And what I mean by that is that if you have players that like to build their character and make the indestructible machine where, oh, okay, well, if I take this trait, then for instance, I can wield a two-handed weapon one-handed. If I take this trait on top of it, I get to swing it twice. Oh, well, wait, if I get this trait here, then I can carry two of those two-handed weapons. And what can happen is that players that are very math-oriented and that are very good at stacking skills and things like that could wind up making very, very, very powerful characters. And what you could have is you could have a imbalance in your party. Like if one character sits there and says, well, I'm going to take all of these skills here and I'm going to make myself into the machine, and then yet the other character is sitting there going, well, I want to be an artist, so I want to be able to draw and everything. So my deal with the way that I run my games is I like to have story-based campaigns. I want to hear more about your character's weaknesses than your strengths. If you want to just make an amazing character and go out and kill things and everything, then I'd recommend like Skyrim or World of Warcraft. For me, role-playing games are all about the story, and let's talk about the story, and let's make interesting characters, and let's tell interesting stories together. That's the whole goal of this. So something else, the only other race that I realize I kind of skipped over, and so I'm going to go back because my mind kind of works like MTV of the 80s, are the Changelings, which are a very interesting race. So the idea behind the Changelings are that when a baby, and this is more so in the barbarian world, but we're even starting to see it more in around the civilized areas of Ambria. But what happens is that when there's a picture of a Changeling right there. So very elvish in their natural form. And that is because it is when a baby is born and unattended, usually at night when they're sleeping, the elves sneak in and replace the baby with a changeling, which is a distant cousin of the elves. And then they take the human baby back to Davokar, and they wind up raising it as one of their own. And to what this end, for what end, it's never been made really clear. Changelings can shape change, obviously, via their name. Much more of a magical illusion than, say, crunching bones or shifting themselves. Changelings are something that you do see in civilized areas, but they're definitely outcast type characters. They're not a very highly respected character. We're at 23 minutes right now. So I will tell you, and then there's a little adventure in the back here that tells you how to play. Has a first set adventure. The majority of your adventures in Symbaroum are going to be intrigue type adventures between houses or barbarian clans, but really the entire system is all about funding expeditions into Davokar and finding riches and braving dangers, and then exploring Davokar and facing the dangers in there. So really quick, I want to walk over some of the other items that I normally get. I'm a big fan of screens, as you all know, and this screen has some beautiful artwork. It prevents the players from looking at what I'm doing, But the one thing that I did not care for is that there's most of the tables here are all about generating random expeditions in Davokar. I would have preferred more of combat tables, damage tables, things like that. As a GM would have been a little bit more practical for me. Did I still buy it? Yeah, I did. Would I still buy it again? Absolutely, because it's just got beautiful artwork, and I can't have my players looking at what I'm doing. What's the thing that you should buy right after you buy the core rule book? In my opinion, it's one of these two. Either the Player's Guide or the Monsters Codex. The Advanced Player's Guide, the best thing about that is it gives you access to some additional races. Now, that being said, I will tell you that these races get somewhat exotic. And so what I would not do, some new archetypes to choose from again, but those are just things that you can do that you don't have to use those. I like this picture of this goblin. This is really cool. And then here is a troll, and that's one of the things that you are able, that these characters are now playable with the Player's Guide, is it opens you up to some new races that are playable. Now, that being said, it is not like Dungeons and Dragons where you've got, you know, the draconian and the tiefling just walking into a town and nobody thinking anything. If you choose to play one of these very much more exotic races, then there's going to be serious repercussions for it. And obviously one of the main things is the elves are now a playable character here. These races here I could definitely see in some of the more rural areas, the more wilderness type areas and everything. These are very playable. But if you're starting a campaign, say, in Ambria to try and prevent a assassination plot of the queen, then a lot of these characters would not be compatible because you just don't see them in this type of area. An abducted human, these are humans that have been taken by the elves and raised as elves. So you get to find out a little bit of the mystery about what happens to them. Dwarves. Okay, so the way that they portray dwarves in this is that once the country of Ambria was established, this group of families of dwarves show up at the gate, and they wind up, hang on a second. Hey, unnamed 16-year-old son of mine, there is a guest at the door, and I'm still filming here. And there goes the dog. It's okay. This is how we keep it. We keep it real. And it's right when I'm talking about the dwarves in here, too. So anyway, so these groups of families show up on the door, and they say, hey, we're these wonderful craftsmen, and you know, we're separated from our kingdom, and can we come into the city gates, and we'll create beautiful things, and we'll create beautiful jewels and what have you. Well, it turns out it was a complete lie, because the dwarves here, almost like an Italian mob type of families, they are like criminal syndicates, and they start running prostitution and extortion, and they start controlling large portions of the city in much like classic organized crime. The big thing about dwarves, too, is that their family loyalty is everything. And again, they're kind of like, it's a very different play on dwarves, which I love. But they're not necessarily, you know, they're not really bad guys, because they got this deep family almost honor among them and everything, but yet they're all about they don't make anything, they don't produce anything, they just they use physical force and extortion to try and engage in their criminal enterprises. So trolls are playable in this, and the thing about the trolls is I just don't see them as a very practical character, because you're not going to see the trolls outside of civilized areas. The trolls are going to be for maybe a one-trick pony in a campaign or an adventure that takes place deep within the forests of Davokar. Same thing with the undead here. Given the fact that these people have fought a huge war against undead, undead players are not going to be able to just strut around the major civilized areas. This would be a very, very limited character if you chose to play this, and it would be very hard for you to get along socially with other players. So you get some new traits in here, but anyway, this was the first book that I bought in addition, and I would definitely recommend that. Then the Monster Codex is just, this is much like your monster manual, and the one thing that I love about this book is that each creature has an amazing picture done by Martin Grip, and great descriptions. The creatures are very unique. I say that right as we come to the dragon. You're like, yeah, dragon, really unique. And they are very much dip into the Nordic lore, which is just amazing. These guys at Free League, they know what they're doing. Now, this system is one of the only Free League games that does not use the Year Zero system, which I like so much. I don't know how I'm going to like this system. I mean, there's interesting things about it, but we'll have to see. So anyway, this is just, if you're a GM, this is a must, because the artwork, isn't that amazing? Just, it's so awesome. So yeah, this is what's got to be next on your list here. Anyhow, so there's that, and then the Game Master's Guide really just contains information in there about running large-scale battles, like battles with armies, and there's also lots of treasure, some new traits, and campaign ideas in there. Now, before I sign off with you guys, I do have to say that they have, much like Free League, they do have their Throne of Thorns campaign. And each one of the Throne of Thorns campaigns, there's a campaign section in the beginning of the book where it describes a major city in the world of Symbaroum, and then the second half of the book is the actual campaign itself. The campaigns themselves and the cities are absolutely beautiful. The artwork is amazing. The maps are very well done. The thing that's really cool thing that I really like about these adventures is that Martin Grip has gone to the trouble of every major character, every major player in the story gets a friggin' portrait. And the portraits are not just little scribbles or little ink drawings that he did in a weekend and everything. Each one is an amazing melancholy painting. And he did this in the Alien role-playing game as well. And see, the maps are very well done. The story itself is fairly flexible. And the thing is that each of these NPCs has a heavy focus on character and on character arc. And again, it's a very dark fantasy setting. So this is not about White Knights and King Arthur, although I love King Arthur. This is a much more savage world, more like Robert E. Howard's World of Conan, which I love those books. But again, it's a Nordic setting, so we're think the darkness and harshness of Conan with in a Scandinavian type setting. So anyway, Thistlehold is the city in which all of the expeditions into Davokar are sprung. And so this adventure takes place in Thistlehold, which is that city there. The second one takes place in Karvasti. Karvasti is the biggest barbarian city, and it's also on the very edge of Davokar, but the most important thing, central cultural center for all the barbarian tribes. And then Indaros is the capital of Ambria, so this is going to have a lot of, think of King's Landing, so this is a lot of, or even Edoras. A lot of the royalty and the royal houses are there. And then lastly, this one, the Mother of Darkness, actually takes place in Symbar. So the emphasis on this campaign setting is that it really emphasizes on the old kingdom of Symbar itself. And what's amazing is these books are thick, they're beautiful, they're very well illustrated, and yet the basic book, Symbaroum, has a wealth of information in it before you even get into these things. Everything you need to play is right here. So even though I haven't played this game, I am going to stand by it, and I am going to give it a big old Bland Gaming beer of recommendation, because I just love the crud out of this setting. And I cannot wait to start it. I can't wait to play it. Unfortunately, right now, I'm up to my ears in my Coriolis campaign. And then my players are also really itching to play the Twilight 2000 campaign when it comes out in the summer. I think the pre-sale. So the whole reason why I wanted to talk about this tonight is that in the ancient kingdom where the humans abandoned, right? There is now a boxed set. Well, it's not a box set. It's 2 books. It's a big, thick book. Comes with a map, and then it also comes with a scenario. I think it's like a hardcover book with 5 unpublished scenarios. But it's in these haunted lands that are right down here. It costs for the 2 hardcover books and the map. It's about $90 American. I went ahead and picked it up because, again, their track record with me is just so flippin' good. But the idea of coming back into these haunted lands where maybe they're still undead and it's just like dead, and even though Davokar is filled with ancient evil, it's very much alive. The whole forest itself is alive, and it's just the opposite where if you go south down here, it's just these complete dead lands and wasted. And like the soil and stuff was so ruined by this undead magic and stuff that was down here. They can't even live down there. So anyway, that is on pre-sale. You can get it at Free League's website at their site. And so take a look at that. It took me 5 minutes of looking at it, and I said, "Yep, that's what I'm going to get." So anyway, thanks for watching. Please in the comments let me know what you think. If you have run Symbaroum and you like it, please let me know. If you like D&D and you are greatly offended by my critique of D&D, I don't know, go have a drink or something, because I am, D&D is just something that I've outgrown. I have a lot of my good friends still love it. They still love to play it, but it's just something that I'm looking for something more in my fantasy setting, and I will tell you that I really found it here in Symbaroum. Now, again, whether or not the rules work, we'll have to see. I like the structure of it so far, but I definitely will put probably some rules on my players as far as the number of human characters in my group. And then I'm also going to ask my characters to refrain from creating killing machines and to focus more on story-based characters, which is something that I would do anyway, but with the Year Zero engine, it almost forces you into a more story-based character creation than getting into that Slayer type of character. So anyway, thanks again for watching. Here's cheers to you. At least where I live, we're out here on West Coast America. I think we're coming through this pandemic, so hopefully we'll get some table nights together and get some face-to-face gaming in. In the meantime, thanks for watching, and thanks for tuning in to the most boring internet channel ever.